Dude.
Welcome.
So you built this?
Yep. This is the Bird Ring.
So you built your own venue/recording studio in your garage.
Yep. That's right.
But it's like so much more than that. So I previously recorded 3 musical examples for you. I used a super clean interface, straight in, no saturation, just very, very clean. Taking those performances and reamping them to the same amp and 3 different speakers. What this does is it removes any sort of little discrepancy or error or difference in my performance, in my playing. So it's the same performance we're hearing each time. So what we're going to do is we're going to send the signal out of the computer, out of the interface, along this cable, and then we get to this box here. This is a reamping box, and what this is going to do, it's going to convert the signal from a line out back into an instrument level signal, the appropriate signal to go into an amplifier. So then we're going into the Venture V12 here, and then we're going to go out of the 3 different cabinets, 410, and then we have a 115 and a 212. And then what we're going to do is we're going to put some awesome microphones out, really, really high quality microphones where the audience would be. So now it's not a question of how the speakers sound, it's how do these cabinets sound actually in a venue, in a room, in a controlled quality, small venue like this one. I'm really excited to see how these cabs compare. So it's not just how does a 10-inch speaker sound, it's how do 410s sound against 212s against 115 in an actual venue from the perspective of the audience with some really high quality microphones. I'm really excited about this.
QTC 40s.
Ooh.
These are my favorite Omnis of all time.
What is that?
Back in college, I did some interning, and we did a lot of classical recordings. Also some rock stuff where we'd use these for overheads, but we put them out in front of orchestras or spot mics on some of the instruments, and they're just super flat, super detailed. Today is going to be kind of that reference standard, right, of what we're trying to capture in the room. They're very low distortion, very good impulse response. I think these go down to like 9 hertz to 40,000 hertz is their response. That's flat. Crazy. So yeah, I love them.
Huge thank you to Sweetwater for sending these mics out to do this video. So these will be your ears as the audience to actually hear what these bass rigs sound like in an actual venue.
This felt like it was a good spot for that.
Yeah, kind of right in the. This is right where you'd be.
Like I'd say, if you were here at a show, standing around right in front of house, in a room, nice spot.
Yeah, I think that's a great spot. We're 16 feet and 6 inches. All right, so Andy's taping the ground here. So we'll put the next cab in the exact same spot. Andy's setting up this mic. It's the same mic. It's omnidirectional, which means it picks up in all directions. But he's putting it where I would be standing. Basically, bass player perspective. And what we can do is we can compare bass player perspective from audience perspective, which is right here. This will be vertical as well. Right, Andy, we're going to go vertical for these.
Yes, that's what we're going to do.
This is the best accurate representation of what someone would hear if they were standing in this room. So we can see the difference between audience perspective and bass player perspective. Science.
Nice.
Here's the room.
Definitely a room.
Very roomy. Here's bass player's perspective.
It's actually pretty cool.
And then here's the DI.
Wow. It's a nice sounding DI too. So I think the bass player perspective is actually a pretty cool comparison, right? Because to me it almost sounds like this minus the roominess.
Yeah.
There's a lot more acoustic treatment up there on the stage than out here. So everything behind the curtain, there's a lot of acoustic, bass traps and panels and such that are, just to help focus some of the sound, right? Absorb some of the sound. And the audience side has less, but usually there's a full audience.
Right.
That makes a big difference in the kind of, the what you actually experience out here. So
sure. No, that's a good point. Yeah. Like rooms feel very different and react very differently when you have a lot of people. And for the record, this is like a properly treated room. This is not just like a shoddy house show garage. This is like Andy built this thing out. There's bass traps everywhere. There's diffusion and absorption everywhere. This is a really high quality pristine sounding rooms. So hearing the difference is pretty wild. I feel like the DI to the house sounds the best in terms of control, consistency,
like evenness of the different tones, right? Yeah, fidelity.
Fidelity,
yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
DI straight to house, but the different speaker sizes on stage do have they do sound different from each other,
right?
From the audience perspective,
right?
But the question is it enough of a difference to really matter?
I still think it goes back to what we said before. What feels best to you as a player on stage probably matters more than what's happening on the audience side.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say I like the way I sound the best in these examples with the 15.
Yeah.
And, and it's so much air. It's like you feel that air.
Right. Yeah. So what's really interesting when I listen to them, there's a more fullness to the 410, like full range, right? Like it's almost to a point where it's a little muddier. Not that it's bad, but like it's bringing in some of those lower mids a little bit higher. The 15 has got a bigger bottom end. It's got a little less on the top, oddly. I guess that makes sense. But so I feel like the bottom end's actually clearer and a little. I mean, it extends lower, right? That makes sense. The 212s did sit somewhere in the middle. I was kind of indifferent on them. I kind of like maybe the 410s or the 115. I think you could go either way based on which particular sample we were playing back, right?
Mm-hmm. To your point, it's how the player feels on stage.
Right.
Let's listen to the bass player perspective.
Okay. All right, the 115 and the 212 sound most similar to me. Extended range, I would say 200 up feels the same. Mm-hmm. Below that, 15 feels, it goes lower, so it feels better in that regard.
Mm-hmm.
I think the 410 is just a different sound than the two of those.
Yeah, I used to think it was like 410 and 115, and 212 is somewhere in the middle, but it's closer. It's not in the center. It's closer to the 15.
I think so. Listening to these in this kind of format, yes. So I think 410s maybe even style-wise, right? It's going to have more authority in that lower mid area, which I think can really work well. If you like the way your part sounds on the 15 versus that means that's what you were going for, right?
Yeah, and full circle, if I'm playing 15s, I like the way I sound. I like the way I feel.
Right.
And I'm not blasting you.
Right.
And I'm sending that DI signal to you.
We have both.
I feel good on stage, so I'm going to play the best I can.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm giving you some space to work, and you can make it work with the rest of the band in front of house.
And I think that's really where it's at, right? If you think about where bass lives in a mix, you're probably cutting out a lot of these low mids.
You are.
Right?
Yeah. Well, and to be fair, too, you mentioned earlier, like, you've tuned your system a little bit where you've pulled out around 200.
Because it's the size of the room where that really is problematic, and, you have to.
Yeah, and I think a responsible bass player, in my opinion, when you check, you are EQing your amp to the room. So, like, if the stage is too boomy, like, pull out some low mids or some lows, right? Like, do some things.
Right.
Like, I think a responsible bass player is basically being front of house for themselves if there is no front of house.
Right.
Like
well, it's the mix for you and you people around you.
Mhm.
That's for sure. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll listen to example 2.
Yeah. That's going to be good because that one's the pick, right?
Yeah, that was my favorite.
I tone-wise, I did like that. Should we? I hear less room ambience, right? You know, the pick isn't a compressor, but it is giving more attack, more volume in general, right?
Yeah. A friendly reminder that your technique, be that finger style or pick or however you're actually striking the strings, has a huge tonal difference on your sound. I think you're right. I think the pick is it's helping cut in this room.
And with an ensemble, even more so.
Yeah.
Right? Assuming that you're playing that part with a group, it's going to sound great.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing I've learned out of this experience, I think for old school music, the 15 feels the best to me.
Yeah, yeah.
But then when you start to get into more technical music like slap, that's where I think the 410s outperform the 15. But then for the player that is trying to do a little bit of everything, that 12 is a nice hybrid that can kind of do both well, I think.
Right. No, I think so, yeah. Probably going to still be a big combination of the player, particular bass they're playing,
That's
maybe
huge.
even the strings they're playing.
Yeah.
Right?
Or like if they're a 5-string player versus 4-string.
I remember a gig a long time ago. It was a guy playing a fretless electric through a 410 rig, and the guy was amazing. I feel like it complemented the guitar and the player really well.
Mm-hmm.
You know, would the 15 do quite as much in that regard? Hard to say, but the 410 was really nice, you know, in that scenario. So I think it might be similar. You know, when we talk about these specific amps, I think that you're probably still going to have a particular physics thing that's happening, right, with the size of the driver, right?
Yeah.
The arrangement of the cabinet. I think they all perform very well, and you're going to have some, you know, somewhat traditional differences, I think.
I think so. To echo what we said earlier, I think the Omni mic in the room, we do hear a little difference, but it's slight.
Yeah.
For just your average person standing out front.
I think they're going to value the experience that they have in that moment more so than trying to figure out if the 410 you brought or the 115 you could have brought or vice versa.
Yeah. And I think you're right. I think this is all silly to a certain extent until it's like, if you feel better about yourself and you play better with something, then that moment is better that you're giving them.
And I mean, I think it's we're really coming to some of the conclusions, right? Is this is more of a player choice than you know, a particular venue or a particular room. I think you could make all of that work, right? There may be some obvious choices like bring the bigger rig for the bigger room or outside, right?
Yeah.
And then, you know, from there, what makes you feel best?
Nice. Andy, if you could tell the bass players of the world one thing as an engineer, what would you want them to know?
You know, we are evaluating gear. We're evaluating different cabinets, right, with the same performance. But what's exciting to me is what I'm hearing on the performance, right? So I think being yourself, being unique, serving the group, the song, is more important than, obsessing over, this cabinet versus that cabinet.
Yeah.
Go for some quality gear. I think that does make a difference. Once you get to a certain point, and then it's about the music and how you feel playing it and how you work with the people you're playing with.
Wise man.
Appreciate it.
All right. Huge thank you to Andy for making this video possible. Also, huge thank you to Sweetwater. And if you're in a band on tour going through Atlanta, you should definitely come play here because it's a vibe.
Yeah, love to have you.
Cool. Thanks, man.
Thank you.
All right. I think we got
Yeah,
more than enough.
that was good.